Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're taking a close look at a piece of engineering that is completely changing the way our daily commutes feel. For over a century, the standard automatic transmission was really the beating heart of automotive convenience. But the landscape of how our cars deliver power to the wheels is shifting. And yeah, pun entirely intended there.
If you've gotten behind the wheel of a newer vehicle recently, you might have noticed a kind of bizarre lack of gear shifts. That familiar rising and falling roar of the engine as you accelerate, it's just gone. Instead, you get this incredibly smooth, uninterrupted acceleration. Well, that feeling is all thanks to the continuously variable transmission, or CVT. It's a piece of technology that's absolutely loved by efficiency experts, sometimes loathed by driving purists, and honestly pretty widely misunderstood by the general public.
So here's our agenda for today as we basically treat the transmission like a vital organ. We'll cover 1. The core CVT mechanism, 2. Toroidal and planetary eCVTs, 3. The rubber band effect, 4. Warning signs of failure, and 5. Preventing costly CVT repairs. Let's jump in. Section 1. The core CVT mechanism. Let's start by stripping away the complexity and looking at the core mechanics of how a standard CVT actually operates. To really understand the genius here, we kind of have to look at the contrast. While traditional automatics use fixed, interlocking gears, say 6 to 10 discrete speeds that cause a noticeable jolt, or what we call shift shock when changing, CVTs operate on a completely different paradigm. They create an infinite number of ratios. This allows for totally seamless power delivery without any interruption in traction at all. What's really fascinating is how the standard CVT replaces physical interlocking gears entirely. Instead, you have two cone-shaped pulleys. One is connected directly to the engine, which is your input, and the other is connected to the wheels, acting as the output. Bridging the gap between these two pulleys is a high-strength metal V-belt or chain. It looks incredibly simple on the surface, but the engineering required to handle the massive forces going on in there is just astounding.
So how does the magic actually happen? It all comes down to hydraulic actuators. They dynamically squeeze the pulley halves together or pull them apart based on oil pressure from the transmission's computer. When the halves squeeze together, they force the belt to ride higher up, which increases the effective diameter. When they separate, the belt drops lower. Think of it a lot like a bicycle chain moving across different sized sprockets on your rear wheel. Except there are no steps. It's a completely smooth, continuous slide. This allows the transmission to constantly pick the absolutely perfect gear ratio for any given split second of your drive.
Moving right along to Section 2, toroidal and planetary eCVTs.
Now, the crucial point to remember is that a CVT is actually more of a concept than a single rigid mechanical design. And because it's a concept based on continuous variation, it's led to some fascinating technological mutations that go way beyond just belts and pulleys. Take the toroidal CVT, for example. It ditches the belt entirely. Instead, it utilizes specialized discs and power rollers to transfer power through pure friction and geometry. By tilting the rollers between the input and output discs, the gear ratio changes infinitely. What literally blows my mind here is that the geometric principle for this was originally conceptualized by Leonardo da Vinci over 500 years ago. Today, we're using advanced metallurgy and specialized traction fluids to actually make it work in modern automobiles.
Meanwhile, if you drive a hybrid, you might have something completely different under the hood. Toyota's highly specialized eCVT doesn't use belts, pulleys, or cones at all. Nope, it uses a really clever planetary gear set paired with two electric motors, known as MG1 and MG2. By changing the speed and direction of these electric motors, the system can smoothly blend engine torque and vary the gear ratio infinitely. This completely eliminates the friction wear you'd find in traditional belt systems and provides bulletproof gear-based reliability.
Let's shift gears a bit. Section 3. The rubber band effect.
Let's see how this whole mechanical design builds into the unique and sometimes polarizing driving quirks that you actually experience behind the wheel. If you've ever pressed the gas pedal in a CVT, you might have felt a strange sort of cognitive dissonance. Your engine revs up to a loud, constant drone, and it just stays there, completely out of sync with your rising speed. This is known as the rubber band effect. To our ears, which are so accustomed to the rising and falling pitch of traditional stepped gears, it sounds like a slipping clutch. But in reality, this is a marvel of engineering. The transmission is intentionally holding the engine at its perfect peak efficiency RPM while adjusting the pulleys to increase vehicle speed. The numbers really prove exactly why manufacturers absolutely love that rubber band effect. By holding the engine at that perfect, constant RPM sweet spot, the CVT delivers significantly better fuel economy and fewer greenhouse gas emissions compared to traditional stepped manual or automatic transmissions. Essentially, you're trading the dramatic acoustic roar of gear shifts for maximum energy optimization.
Which brings us to Section 4, warning signs of failure.
However, all this high-efficiency magic, it definitely comes with new vulnerabilities. A CVT is a high-friction, heat-generating environment, and you really need to know how to diagnose the symptoms of a struggling unit before it's too late. If you start noticing issues on your morning commute, you might wonder, can I just power through it and deal with it this weekend? The answer is a definitive no. Driving on a failing CVT is extremely dangerous. A defective unit can trigger a limp mode that drastically cuts your speed to preserve the vehicle, which is obviously a massive hazard on a busy highway. Furthermore, continuing to drive puts incredible undue pressure on your engine, potentially destroying other vital components and pretty much guaranteeing a wildly expensive total replacement.
You have to be incredibly vigilant. We call these the 4 horsemen of CVT death. First, listen for an angry whine or a grinding noise that gets worse as you accelerate. This points to internal bearing or pulley wear. Second, feel for violent shuddering or jerking during acceleration. Third, keep an eye on your tachometer. If your engine RPM suddenly flares up but your car isn't moving any faster, your belt is slipping. And finally, if you ever smell an acrid, burning odor, that is overheated transmission fluid. If you experience literally any of these, pull over immediately.
Finally, let's look at Section 5, preventing costly CVT repairs.
Fortunately, we don't have to just sit around and wait for disaster to strike. We can solve these problems before they even start with some highly actionable, proactive care to protect your vehicle and, let's be real, your wallet. Heat and friction are the main enemies here, so here is your CVT survival guide. Remember that getting a specialized fluid flush every 60,000 miles is incredibly cheap insurance against a devastating $6,000 replacement bill. CVT fluid breaks down much faster under heat than standard automatic fluid. Combine that flush with gentle acceleration, meaning try to avoid those heavy, jackrabbit starts that violently shock the belt. On cold mornings, give the car 30 to 60 seconds to circulate that thick fluid before you drive off. And lastly, unless your vehicle is explicitly rated for it from the factory, do not tow heavy loads. The constant strain is a literal death sentence for those internal metal belts.
As automotive technology continues to rapidly evolve, the CVT stands out as a brilliant, if sometimes misunderstood, bridge to the future of efficiency. So, I'll leave you with this to ponder. Are the massive gains in fuel efficiency and a perfectly smooth ride worth trading in the classic roaring gear shifts of the past? Let that sink in next time you're effortlessly gliding down the highway. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep your curiosity in drive.